Welcome back, everyone, to round 6 of the Clash of Commanders in Strasbourg. We are back with another fancy matchup. I'm here with Samuel,
Hi everyone.
and together we are having a look at Gitrog again. It's Anthony with his favorite frog against Atraxa. And the last time he was playing Gitrog against Terra. If you haven't seen that match, definitely check it out. I will link it on top of this video. And here we see the control matchup instead. The player on the right is a known player to both of us. He is on Atraxa for quite some time, as far as I know. So he's
He's
very
also playing a
experienced.
really cool Atraxa. It seems to me, I think, that
It's
is altered
Kevin
to be
altered.
Phyrexian.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
Kevin altered Phyrexian
beautiful.
alteration. Yeah, really cool. I like it a lot. Yeah. So we know these types of matches from back in the days. Just that Atraxa wasn't printed when Gitrog was omnipresent. I think back then, what was the go-to control deck? I have to think
Could have
about that.
been Tymna Kraum.
For
Uh,
example, or maybe Baral was legal back then, I think.
yeah, I
I
think.
think also is it combinations were quite popular.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
example, the planeswalkers that Rowan and how was the other called?
Uh,
You know what I mean, right? Viewers can put
yes,
it in the comments. There was some time Will and
Will
Rowan.
and Rowan. Yep, you're
Yeah.
correct.
That was an interesting era in Duel Commander, in my opinion. And yeah, I think there were a bunch of different control decks. Some of them with lower CMC commanders, and I think when Flavion or Crimelun discovered Tivit, at that point people started to be bolder in terms of trying out higher CMC command zones with better effects. And here we go. A few years later, we're still playing Atraxa in a command zone because it still seems to be one of the best options, I would say.
Yeah, and a card that isn't gonna be like it might get replaced at some point,
Yeah.
but the ability itself is really only getting better with more powerful artifacts and creatures and
And other card types, right?
enchantments
Because
being added.
even
Exactly.
there
So
was even battle printed in the reminder text. Because back then the new card type was established with, I don't know the set, but yeah, it's as good, or it's that good that reanimator shells like your Terra, for example, abuse it.
yeah,
And yeah, let's have a look at the match. A few things happened already. We had a resolved Life from the Loam. There is an amulet on field. There is a aftermath analyst. A couple of cards in the graveyard, and
which yeah, this is a game state that is pretty scary for Atraxa, I would say,
I think so too.
because the analyst is not a sorcery speed ability. I think you can activate it at any time if I am not mistaken, which means that he can also just go for a value aftermath analyst uh activation, which with what am I looking at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lands in the graveyard, puts him to 10 lands in play. If he decides to, if he thinks he has enough time, he can also crack the Urza's Cave. Oh no, okay, he's going for the yeah. So exactly, this case is so much more mana, which means that he can cast a Gitrog, have it countered, and still keep casting other spells in
Yeah,
the turn that Atraxa's only making one land drop.
yeah.
Um,
Just in case you wonder, usually the lands would enter untapped. It would enter tapped, but since there's the amulet on field, they enter untapped,
yep.
which is not too relevant in this case. But as you mentioned, the Urza's Cave is still open, so there is the opportunity to search for another land here end of turn, but Anthony does decide to not do that.
I would have
Mm,
thought that he goes for an Urza's Cave for a shifting woodland, because that represents a loop with the Aftermath Analyst,
yeah,
but maybe
that's
he
right.
has a line in mind. He has another way to return lands in his hand. Um, the lantern,
Gerard's
Gerard's
Lantern.
Lantern, I think is what it's called.
No, I think it's
What's
Hourglass. Gerard's Hourglass, right? I think it's
maybe
something with
I can
Hourglass. Yeah, yeah.
I can have a look.
Either way, Nissa is coming down, followed up by a Glacial Chasm. And it looks like they're counting mana already.
Yeah, you're correct. It's called Gerard's Hourglass Pendant.
Pendant, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Marcus back then when he played Gitrog, he resolved this card a couple of times against me, so it's still wandering in my memories. Hmm. Going for more lands, there is a Gitrog. Gitrog should be countered.
There is
There's
a
enough,
mana leak in hand.
yeah, there's
Um,
enough mana open to
Pay for
um,
the mana leak. So
even pay for a replicated loose focus. That's what I was going for. So it seems to resolve. Yeah, exactly what you mentioned. Like, this is
a leyline binding.
a leyline binding? Yeah,
Yep.
that seems to be right. Just not the copy that we play. So I was a bit confused.
That's the copy that I play, but I play with the same artwork, just uh not texture foil, just
Oh,
a
you're right.
regular
Now I
foil.
see. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right, right,
Yeah.
right, right. Okay. Yep. If I look closer, I realize. So leyline binding coming down. Here we see the more or less. Yeah, it's a relatively new land because Wizards decided to finally close the cycle of cycling lands,
It's
dual
not
color,
closed.
isn't it?
They just printed two more.
Oh, okay. I thought it was finished actually.
Nope.
But this one is the one that enters untapped if you control two or more basic lands.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this
There's also
cycle
the
is the battle
cycler.
cycle is also not finished.
Yeah, no, they just printed the
Okay.
blue and green ones and black and green ones.
I see. I thought it was closed, but okay.
So, in case you're wondering what's happening here, the Nissa has a triggered ability that gives you a mana whenever a land enters the battlefield, and if it's the second time the ability has resolved in a turn, then you get to flip the top of your library until you flip uh, a land and or no, an elf or an elemental card. So the deck plays Lumbra as an elemental, probably an endurance as well. Maybe not sure about that. And the Aftermath Analyst as an elf. Oh,
There's a Wrath of
Wrath
the
the
Skies.
Skies
Yeah.
X is 3. That does kill a lot of stuff.
But I think it's not too impressive, actually.
Yeah, so he can regenerate one, maybe the Nissa with the Yavimaya Hollow,
Yeah.
which seems to be what he's doing. Um, Something that is pretty rarely relevant, but in this case, uh, pretty good line of text.
Comes in handy, right?
And he has the Lumra as a redundant effect of getting back lands.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah,
now, since Nissa is on field, you get back multiple lands, and oh, we even have a Phyrexian Tower. Okay.
that's a Volrath
And
Stronghold.
sorry, yeah, for Roller Stronghold, true.
So we're gonna see a recast of the Gitrog monster, I think. Oh no,
No,
of
it
the
will be Lumbra, I guess.
Lumra. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the teddy bear arrives. We have 2 lands in the graveyard right now. Another one is added. We have might have been better to attack before Pleasure Chasm enters.
We can sack the chasm
Yeah, I
tomorrow.
was just about to
Yeah.
say, unless he decides to sack the Chasm, because it's not a relevant
So
land
he's
against
resolving this
Atraxa.
ability. I'm not sure. So I think it might be endurance that he's going for now. He
Could
might
also be
also.
Titania. I think there are a couple of options actually. Really depends on the list.
Yeah, it might be
I still
tuned so that the
Explorer is
Nissa
no
only
elemental.
finds
Ah,
Tireless
Tireless
Provisioner.
Provisioners. Yeah, that's nice. That makes sense.
So Lumbra was definitely one of the better hits to have with the Nissa last turn.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, he gets to cast the Provisioner right away. He still has Regeneration open with the Yavimaya Hollow. And
Also, thanks to Bloomburrow, that Lumbra is not only a bear. Could have easily been just a bear, right?
yeah,
I don't know if that's like lore-wise that they added elemental on it, or what was the reason for that. Actually, I like the combination of having the Yavimaya Hollow against the control player. Makes it really, really hard to get rid of those cards if it isn't for effects like Leyline Binding.
yeah.
Yeah,
So having to check back what Regenerate does.
yeah.
It is a pretty obscure ability by now.
So Arcane
Arcane Signet.
Sickness is played.
So no lethal from the Lumra.
2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 13 lands. So
Yeah, with
right
2/3
now
power
there,
creatures.
yeah, right now there is lethal. Oh, that's a nice Lotus. I have that too, just not with a signature. That's a
I think it's a bit sinful to represent black mana with a
Black Lotus.
lotus. I feel
Yeah.
like that card represents all colors.
It's just flex.
Yeah. But he has 3 fetch lands in play, which do draw a lot of cards with the Gitrog now. And he's sort of allowed to do whatever he wants here because we know about the leyline binding, and we know that the leyline binding has to basically target the Lumra because the Lumra is big enough to do lethal damage. So he gets to resolve his Gitrog monster and just keep drawing cards. Mm,
Yeah, and
Pretty
still
good.
dealing 6 damage this turn, and he presents lethal next turn. More or less puts Atraxa in a position to play the commander in order to have a blocking wall that would also provide some life gain. But then again, there is the frog, and the frog is usually here for shenanigans.
So I
Now
think
there is this
it seems like they agreed to shortcut. Oh no,
so
he's
playing
cast
the
the.
safekeeper, yeah. Interesting. He decides to get rid of
Oh,
provision.
he's not using the Lotus to track black mana. He's using the Lotus to track treasures from the Tireless Provisioner.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that's also
That makes more sense.
yeah.
So yeah, Leyline has to go after Lumbra. He's probably targeted Lumbra, and with the Safekeeper on the stack, um, he can activate Urza's Cave in response to go search for Talon Gates, which might. Oh no, this is. Does this work? No.
Sacrificing it
Yeah,
to Lazartep Query does work, yeah.
yeah, and he has the ability to get it back with the Lazotep Quarry at some point if he wants to.
Yeah, but even if not, I think I mean, depending on the hands. Oh, we saw a shred memory, and that will result in a very likely result in a squandered resources. So that's definitely the point at which the Atraxa player might concede.
Yeah. A lot of cards drawn here.
Yeah,
He's
definitely. And here we
gone
go.
for a shred memory. Yeah.
That will probably end in a combo. Ah, okay, here. And for the sake of saving time, the Atraxa player says, yeah, well, we can scoop it up.
Yeah.
I will most likely not find something next turn, even if I cast my commander, and then you still have all the means to go for your combo. Ball spike used on the Sylvan Safekeeper.
The Atraxa player is playing a very interesting combination of Pimp.
Yeah,
He
that's
has
true.
this like very this altered Atraxa, and he is playing basically all of his lands in full art if possible. And then he's playing a whiteboarded force spike.
But it fits well with the sleeves, actually.
That's true.
So we have a Horizon Explorer. Mm-hmm.
Says
As
lands you
we,
control enter the battlefield untapped.
yeah,
So it
I
allows.
think it's even an Amulet of Vigor, right? That there's a trigger that goes on stack.
Is it? Right, I'll have a look.
I'm not sure. That's why
Don't
I'm asking. But
think so.
yeah, we saw in the game against Terra already that the deck is also featuring Lumbra lines in a way that it's not making use of Mirror Pool. That doesn't make sense. But we saw Lumbra last game perfectly fine to feature it in a lands deck like that. And he also makes use of a couple of those untap effects.
Yeah. Yeah, so Horizon Explorer does just say lands you control enter untapped.
Okay, okay.
It has another line of text which says whenever you attack a player, create a lander token. So
True.
we'll see if they maintain that next turn. Oh, okay, he's never mind. Demonic Tutor for Souls to Plowshares takes care of that issue.
Anthony should keep in mind that it's exiled. Okay, the opponent is reminding him. And there is a 6.
No
And this could
land.
have already been a relevant interaction. You know, if it wasn't for the swords, that would be a way
Oh,
to get back
yeah.
the explorer.
So he gets a land back, and now
Oh.
we have a 7/7 Cactus Preserve blocking.
Yeah, I mean, maybe 6 was a bait here to resolve something better.
Well, I mean, I think 6 was, at least in this case, 6 was mostly to find another land here, which he has managed to do. Oh, Cling to Dust on the Zuranor.
Very interesting to see Emerald, the medallion. It's a
True.
card that I think I've never played in any deck. And here we have a
Oh,
Wrath of the Skies again.
that is a
That's
big blowout.
brutal. Yeah.
And
Okay,
we
and a
see
very
a
fast
concession.
concession. So maybe he was relying on the Aftermath analyst to stick in order to
I
get
mean,
rid of
I mean,
those lands.
he is losing a lot there, right? He's losing his untapper for looping with the analyst. He's losing the analyst itself, which was currently representing 2 lands in the graveyard. Um, and he's also lost the medallion, which would have let him cast Gitrog next turn um, for 4 mana. The also with a Teferi bounce still open, being able to read the writing on the wall here and say these games are going to take a little bit of time, so it might be a good idea to just concede.
Mm.
Um,
I
I
mean, you
understand.
what you I do understand it too, but he was 1-0 ahead, and it didn't. I mean, there was a Teferi on board. To me, it didn't look like there was much pressure coming from the Atraxa player. Then again, Atraxa itself is a card that relatively fast finishes games, so I can see why he would
Yeah,
save the time for a potential 2-1. Heartless Summoning coming down, not being counted is a huge thing here,
absolutely.
especially in combination with the Delighted Halfling, right?
Yeah.
Which survives because it has 1-2. And here we have another survivor.
So does Tireless Provisioner, which is a card that,
Yeah.
you know, you don't like to see come down in this situation.
Yeah.
Um, he has an uncounterable Gitrog for 3, and if he has another land, like a fetch land to play here, he's suddenly in a very, very good position.
Oh, and there we go.
Yeah. So we've got
There we go.
mana, we've got another card drawn. Okay, we have him passing the turn, and okay, he's responding to the fetch being cracked by cracking his own fetch, which
Yeah,
also,
that's fine. Playing around Tailsend, for example,
yeah,
most likely results in an underground mortuary. Here we go.
and if
Creating
you
more and more treasure tokens with the help of the provisioner,
and
which
if
is
he sees a
obviously a
land
very good.
here, he gets to draw an additional card. Um,
Yeah.
top card is
Seems to
not a
be good
land.
enough. Yeah. To stay on top.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I mean, now Heartless Summoning reduces the cost of a couple of threats. You have 7 mana against 3 mana, or even 5. Like 8 mana, 5 lands, 3 treasure tokens. If there is another land to come down. And
yeah.
here the
So
Tainted Bag. The pact is rather.
what is he even tainted pacting for in this
I don't
situation?
know. I mean, Wrath of the Skies is not enough.
Yeah, exactly. Wrath of the Skies, if he can cast it for X1 to clear the treasure tokens. Um, it
Oh,
might have been
sorry.
correct.
Actually, Gitrog has 8 mana in addition to, or with the Delighted Halfling already.
So we do see a
So
Solitude in hand that could
yeah,
clear the Gitrog monster at least once.
yeah, but
Um,
not really the play,
and
right?
maybe a second time if he keeps the Swords to Plowshares and has another white card. But that's like, sure, he can do that, but I don't like that as a plan. I mean, there isn't much else that he can do,
Yeah.
but it's definitely it doesn't feel too great to um
To be
be doing
fair,
this.
Gitrog itself is the only threat on board right now because the Provisioner is a 2-1. The Halfling can't attack. So Gitrog is really the main thing to deal with. Then again, it's not too crazy having it dealt with once, even twice. We all played against that deck at some point.
Yeah,
Sometimes Gitrog is cast for 13,
I
comes
th- I,
back
th-
all over again.
I think this was a little bit of inexperience playing against Gitrog coming out here because the I think the astute thing to do would have been uh, to wait for the sacrifice a land trigger and the upkeep to go on the stack with the Swords to Plowshares, and have the opponent sacrifice a land after the Gitrog is swords. In this sort of deck, you're not really expecting much um, in terms of interaction against that, and the upside is that with the second with another way to exile Gitrog in hand, the chance that maybe you can stop him from deploying it a
Yeah.
fourth time. Um, is still alive at that point, and if he
Yeah, very true.
sacrifices a land.
I mean, also you have to take into consideration it's probably a long time ago that he faced Gitrog, so
Yeah,
it's quite normal that you're a bit rusty against the deck and you easily forget those tiny things to think about that you
yeah,
would usually have in mind if you would regularly face that deck, you know.
exactly.
And that's
And there's
exactly one
the
of those things that
yeah.
you let the trigger go on stack and let the land be sacrificed, and then afterwards you can deal with it.
No, the other way around. You let the trigger go on the stack. You exile the Gitrog so he doesn't draw the card from sacrificing the land.
Yeah, but that doesn't work because you can either sacrifice Gitrog or the land, and then
No,
you can just choose to
no,
sacrifice Gitrog.
nope. Gitrog just says at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a land.
Are you sure about that? Okay.
Yep.
Maybe I remember that differently.
Oh, never mind. You are correct. Okay, then it doesn't matter either way. Then you can just
Yeah.
yeah, never mind.
Sacrifice the Gitrog monster unless you sacrifice the land. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that
Yeah, so I think that was always the case that when I face the deck that I would let the trigger resolve, so my opponent is one land down, and then I handle the frog,
yeah. Yeah.
which is
You're right.
honestly in this situation not too crazy because the heartless summoning is doing an incredible job here, and especially in combination with the delighted halfling that for some reason the Atraxa player can't really handle here. Seems that he has the wrong cards.
He doesn't have a white card for the solitude he has in hand.
Oh, that's really
And
bad.
um yeah.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, Gitrog is just dirtling around until he finds one of his combo pieces.
Not sure
Building,
what the did you see oh he talon gates the prime time. That's what I'm missing. Yeah.
what is the DT almost looks like it has an alternate art, a bit of an alteration on top. But
Okay, Toxic paying 5, so
oh,
a
okay,
lot of foresight to um, to have the prime time. What's it called? Uh, in to talent gates to phase out the prime time is to
yeah,
pay for the pact and the upkeep. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
It's
attacking with the
it's
five
it's
prime
again one
time
of those
now.
situations where, as a control player, you sit there and you think about Talon Gates being an obnoxious card, like
Yeah,
something that I can't really interact with outside of cycle effects, and it just naturally dodges my sweeper, and it even ramps up my opponent by one.
yeah,
It's a crazy card. We talked about it several times when I played Tifa in a member focus, and when you played Loot, we also had a couple of situations where it was really good. Just a crazy card. Yeah, and I
absolutely.
think the Prime Evil Titan will be a showstopper for Atraxa. I mean, it looked like he got back control with the Toxic. Then again, if we're looking at the board, there is an Ice Tail Explorer
Blue
coming in
mana Ice
addition.
Tail Explorer.
Jesus. Yeah. So now we're getting back a couple more lands. Oh, there is the, how was it called? Frozen Heart? Something like, no, not Frozen Heart.
Oh, I don't remember. But it
You knew it
sacrifices.
last time.
Well, no,
Yeah,
I
some
know what it does.
Dark Heart, something with Dark Heart. I have to check it up again.
Dark Heart of the Wood.
Yeah, right.
It just has
That's
it
it.
has the activated ability sacrifice a forest, you gain 3 life.
So it's a bit of a goes in a similar direction
It's
that
a Zoran orb
or
and
yeah,
it
exactly. It's a
it's
Zoran
effect
Orb wondering, something that would sacrifice and allow you to draw more cards until eventually you will find one of these, return your entire lands from the graveyard
Yeah,
thing, you know? Yeah.
yeah. We don't have many land sacrifice outlets in the format, so Gitrog is hungry for all of them.
Yeah. Which is fair. And I mean,
So
this
he
is
returned Talon Gates to his hand with the Golgari Rod Farm, and
mhm,
now he gets to stop the Solitude on the prime time.
that
Seeing
is,
he announced that he's going to combat, so he's probably second main phase now.
yeah, that's crazy. So many good interactions. And here we have a shred memory again, which could end up in a squandered resources. Because right now I can't think of a better CMC2 target to find.
Yeah, with Dark Heart of the Wood already in the graveyard, there's
Exactly.
um,
Oh, here we go.
he's gonna have to go for the slightly worse card of Squandered Resources.
I can imagine the Dark Heart being quite a good tool against the aggressive matchups, right?
Yeah,
Things like Spider-Man, for example,
true.
or like the more or less omnipresent Yoshi. You think about it, Yoshi is the only leftover true aggressive deck, right?
Yeah, there's gonna be red deck wins decks um in some tournaments, but
Yeah,
I
that's
feel
true.
like
But I mean, like
it's lost
tier wise,
popularity quite a
yeah,
bit.
tier wise, they're not up to Yoshi in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean there might be room for those decks to come back if any of the like very punishing red spells come off the ban list. But looking at MTG top 8, um, you have to scroll quite a while until you get to anything that is mono red.
I think
Zergov is at
just
0.7% of the metagame.
right.
Just not
Yeah,
quite there anymore.
I mean, I think the way that one drops developed, it can't keep up with how Magic is played these days. At least
Yeah,
not in mono red. Because what mono red currently would need in a command zone is something like a Ragavan, maybe not as pushed, but comparably pushed. You know, like
yeah.
maybe slightly nerfed. That's something that would be great and
Mm.
that would be playable.
I think there are already cards that are on the ban list that would make mono red more playable again. Something like a Maddening Hex, something like a Price of Progress. Um, but I think in the grand scheme of things, those cards are still a bit too swingy.
Yeah,
Like I think a Price of Progress is a card that would find a home in Red Deck Wins, but it would also find a home in Spider-Man, and it would also find a
exactly.
home in these where you have a greedy mana base, therefore, which we're fine with in the format based on like all the how the bannings have been going. Therefore, you just lose the game to a Price of Progress, which I don't think is a healthy dynamic for the format. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, I don't think so either. And also,
there
I find
could
it
be.
hard to justify banning like one of 99s that are not accessible for those archetypes. Just random effects, you know, in order to make the deck a little bit better. But the effect itself, as you said, the card is included in many more decks, and it's extremely swingy. Just talking about Price of Progress now
Yeah,
in particular, it's overall not a very healthy decision in my opinion.
yeah. So we
So
saw Squander Resources cast, sacrifice Talon Gates, and I still Explorer replay Talongates from the graveyard, which lets him uh, phase out the Solitude, which would have been a blocker for the 5/5 prime time. Now he attacks again, gets another primetime trigger, and we might see lethal damage come through. If not, oh, we have an Orcish Bowmaster. That soaks up 2 damage, which puts him to exactly 1.
Yeah, but let's be honest. Apart from that, yeah, there's not much to do, right?
Yeah,
Even if it's since you can. Are we in a stage? Yeah, we can loop the Talon Gates, so Atraxa coming down doesn't do anything. It will just be
exactly.
phased out.
Exactly.
So
He has 2 lands to play, so he can before combat phase out both Solitude and Atraxa.
yeah,
Solitude could have attacked next turn. That might have, but he could have sacked the rot farm, replayed the rot farm, and bounced the Talon Gates to stop that from happening. So yeah, the game was over, and even if he survives at 1 life, there's not much you can do there.
right. Okay, awesome game. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and we will see each other in round 7.
See you next time.
Bye bye.